Well, today we are going to talk about the one word that hinders us, perhaps more than any other word, as it relates to living a big, beautiful, passionate life, which I'm assuming all of us want to live, a big, beautiful, passionate kind of life. I want to suggest to you what might be the single most dangerous word in the English language, and it's an excuse that all of us have thought about at one time or another, but it's the word procrastination. I know my life has been wrecked because of procrastination. Let me first give you a story from the Bible, okay? In Egypt, there were problems in the land, especially if you're a Jew. There was this great labor management conflict. In fact, the greatest labor management conflict almost of all time. Labor, that was the Jews. They had a very bad contract. They were to work 365 days a year from morning until to evening, and then they would die. That was basically it. They would get paid no money, work all day, every day, and then no money. Moses has been drafted by a divine calling to speak on their behalf, to get them released from their slave position. But on the surface, he doesn't appear to have any leverage at all. Management, well, that would be Pharaoh. And Pharaoh is a hardline negotiator. In fact, every time Moses tells him that he needs to let the Jews go, Pharaoh says, no, no, no. In a strange way, every time Pharaoh says he's not letting the Jewish people go, he was getting stronger in his desire that this was the way it was going to be. But then something strange began to happen. All around Egypt, crazy things began to occur. The Nile River looked like it turned to blood. Well, one day gnats appeared out of nowhere, and they were everywhere. You couldn't even open your mouth without swallowing gnats. Moses would go back to Pharaoh and say, you sure you don't want to let us go? You sure don't want to let the Jews go? And he would shake his head, no, no, no. Livestock got diseased, sick, died. People and animals got boils on them, horrible boils. Are you sure, Pharaoh, you don't want to let us go? It looks like things are really going bad around here. You sure you don't want to let us go? No, no, no. Hail began to fall at a rate no one had ever seen before. This was unbelievable. You thought the world was going to come to an end because of the bad hail. Pharaoh still said, no, we're not going to do it. Then there was a plague of locusts where suddenly locusts just swept the land and they were just buzzing around everywhere. Pharaoh said, no, no, no. And then one of the most curious things we find in the Bible is somehow out of nowhere, frogs were everywhere. Frogs all around. Now, I'm not real comfortable with little foreign things like frogs or mice or hamsters, or a dog is about all I'm really good at. And I can just imagine if there were frogs around here, I would be quite uncomfortable. Frogs are everywhere around Pharaoh and around the Egyptians. They're experiencing terrible, terrible times with these frogs. So Moses, one more time, goes to Pharaoh and he makes his pitch again. On the screen, Moses says to Pharaoh, I leave to you the honor of setting the time for me to pray for you and your officials and your people, that you and your houses may be rid of the frogs. Listen, I'll pray for you, Pharaoh. Let us go. I'm going to pray. These frogs will disappear back into the sea. Now watch this, because it's unbelievable what he's going to answer. So he says, are you ready, Pharaoh? Are you ready? And Pharaoh says, tomorrow. What is he thinking? Tomorrow. He can't even back his chariot out of the garage without killing a lot of frogs. They are everywhere. They're in his bed. They're in his clothes. They're on his table where he eats. They're in his plate of food. The frogs are everywhere. And Moses says, listen, all of this can change. All of this can change. What do you think about doing it today? And Pharaoh says, let me think about it. Maybe tomorrow. That's crazy, isn't it? And yet I've done the very same thing. I have seen really smart people, I'm talking about really smart people, doing really dumb things, saying, maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow. I've seen cancer patients smoking through the tracheotomy hole in their neck, saying, I know this isn't good for me, but maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow. I've seen intelligent people sacrificing their reputation, their health, and their fortune to continue in an illicit relationship. I've seen a person staying in relationship with an abuser where everyone around that loves them says, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. And they say, maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow. I've seen a husband hold a grudge against his wife, and he withholds his love, he nurses his resentment, even though he knows it is destroying not only her, but it's destroying his own heart. But he keeps rolling it around in his mind and says, maybe I'll give this up tomorrow. I've seen people who are sexual addicts, have sexual addictions, go to the internet when they know that feeds something in them that's not healthy. But they say, I'm gonna face this, maybe tomorrow. I've seen women and men sinking in unmanageable debt that's destroying their lives. Yet what do? They get one more credit card because they say, I'm gonna fix this tomorrow. I believe in our story, Moses is saying, you don't have to live like this anymore, Pharaoh. God wants you to hear this today, people at the Village Church. You don't have to live the way you're living anymore. God wants you free from whatever it is in your life that is holding you back. He wants you free. Now, it might not be easy, but there is a freedom that God is offering to each of us. But sadly, Pharaoh can live one more night with the frogs. And sadly, we can live one more night with whatever we're holding on to that's holding us back. We can live one more night just like that. It's true, the most dangerous word in the English language is the word tomorrow. Tomorrow, tomorrow. Now, let me stop and say that's a pretty dramatic story, but all procrastination is not dramatic. So let's all take a breath. All procrastination is not so dramatic. Much of procrastination is very mundane. Let me give you a definition of procrastination. Procrastination is the failure to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done. Simple definition. Procrastination is the failure to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done. A rhyme I learned as a kid goes like this. Procrastination is my sin. It brings me naught but sorrow. I know that I should stop it. In fact, I will tomorrow. It's a good poem. Would you read it with me? I just want to hear it in full voice from all of you wonderful people, all right? Procrastination is my sin. It brings me naught but sorrow. I know that I should stop it. In fact, I will tomorrow. Sometimes our procrastination has some pretty unintended consequences. Willis was a very, very, very ignorant boy from the country, young man actually. And he had been coming back from town and his wagon tipped over with all of the corn on it. And he was standing beside the side of the road and he was scratching his head when his neighbor pulled up and said, Willis, what has happened? He said, my wagon tipped over with all my corn. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, get in my truck. We're gonna go to the house. My wife's got supper for us. We'll eat some supper and I'll come back and I'll help you right your wagon and I'll help you get all the corn back on the wagon. And Willis said, I don't think I can do that. My pa wouldn't like that. And the neighbor said, listen. It's a good meal. We still have plenty of daylight. Let's go to the house. Let's eat supper. We'll come back. I'll help you right the wagon and get your corn back on it. You can be on your way. And Willis said, it's a nice invitation, but I don't think my pa would like it. And he said, listen, I insist. And so Willis said, okay. And they went to the house and they ate a fabulous meal. Fabulous. At the conclusion of the meal, the neighbor said, are you glad that you stayed? He said, I really am, but I don't think my pa is going to like it. And the neighbor said, by the way, where is your pa? And Willis said, well, he's under the wagon. See, that would be one time that procrastination would have devastating consequences. You don't want to do that at all. So let's talk about procrastination that maybe you and I are both familiar with. Anybody here, by the way, just naturally say, I have trouble with procrastination? Anybody? So there's some. How many of you say, I don't have any trouble with procrastination? Yeah, I can't stand y'all, but I know that it's true. Now, I've discovered there are two types of procrastinators, and I want to spend a few minutes today talking about each of these, and I want you to know that both of these have consequences you need to be aware of, and I want you to know that I'm going to give you some practical advice, and when you think, well, that's too practical to be in church, I want you to know that everything is spiritual. Everything is spiritual. So if I can say something to you that helps you become a little bit better at managing your procrastination, then that's a good thing. That's a God thing. It's a helpful thing, right? So let me talk to you about the two different types of procrastinators. I want to talk about what you're going to need to move past this habit or difficulty that maybe is holding you down. The first type of procrastinator I want to talk about is called the deadline procrastinator. The deadline procrastinator. You've met this type before, and quite possibly many of you are this way. I am this way. And I first recognized this trait in me when I was in the 4th grade, and this is so true. We had an assignment. I don't remember what the assignment was. I just know it involved cutting stuff out and sticking it on a board, poster board. And I know that we had like several weeks to do this, and I know that I put it off, and I put it off, and I never told my mom about it, and I put it off, and I put it off, and I put it off. And I know that the day before it was due, I waited till everybody went to sleep, and I got up and I went down in our basement and I was trying to cut things out of magazines, and I was trying to, it was the biggest mess you could imagine. My mom came down about 3 in the morning and said, "What are you doing?" And it's like I was busted. I was trying to get an assignment finished that I'd had weeks to do, but it was my first time ever realizing that I had put it off because of the deadline. I saw it really strongly when I was in college. Let me explain for those of you maybe who don't know, but many of you will remember this. In college, they would assign papers that would be due. And these papers, they wouldn't be huge papers, but they would be 5 pages or 7 pages. And you'd have several of these you'd have to do each semester or each quarter. And most people would kind of do a little bit each day or a little bit each week along the way. And then they'd ramp it up towards the end and they would finish with a flourish and they would turn their papers in, but not a lot of stress. That makes sense to me. That looks like a good plan. My plan was the paper was assigned, and I thought the very same things that all my friends thought, that I was going to kind of work on a little bit along the way, and then I was going to ramp it up. But what happened was I would not work on it at all, and then I would pull an all-nighter. Does anybody know what an all-nighter is? Anybody ever pulled an all-nighter? You know what I'm talking about, Luke, you know. All right, so that's kind of the way it was. Now, I got by this way. I'm not saying people that are procrastinators are dumb. I'm not saying that they have any major deficiency. I'm just saying some people, the deadline seems to trip them up. They have to put everything off until the last minute. Now, this became a bigger issue for me when the thesis paper was due our senior year of college. I was a double major. I majored in religion. I majored in communication. And each of these majors required a 50 to 75 page paper due at the end of the year. Not a big deal if you plot it out, right? If you plot it out the way you're supposed to plot it out, you do a little bit the first semester, then you amp it up a little bit, do a little bit more the second semester, and then you finish it up really strong, a little bit more the third semester, into the story, good deal. So that was going to be my plan because I knew the old way would not work. There's no way the old way would work, except I didn't get started in the first semester like I wanted to. There was a lot of things going on, and I was a young father, and pastored a church, and I'm sure there was a lot of things going on. So I said, I can still do this. It's just going to take ramping it up a little bit more. And so that was going to be the plan. I was pretty excited about that. But as it is sometimes with the best plans, I said this last semester, I've got to go because I've got 2 50 to 75 page papers that have to be due. This is my senior assignment. This is a big deal. So this has to happen, except it didn't happen, which meant this is how I finished off my senior year of college, doing 2 50-page papers and doing those papers the last week of my college career, and then rushing breathlessly into the professor's offices to deliver the papers. And Joe, you remember this was in the days before there was computers, and so you actually had to type, and it's like you make a mistake, you gotta put a little corrector in there and back it up. It was horrible, but I delivered them the last minute, and they said, "Ray, these are the greatest papers we have ever read in our lives." Do you believe that? They said, "We're graduating you because we like you. These papers are horrible." But that's what happens when you wait to the very last minute. That was the way it worked for me. That is a deadline procrastinator. Now, I want to explain a little bit about how this is supposed to work and why it works the way it does. Psychologists tell us that for those of us that operate like this against deadlines, there's a reason. They even use an analogy, and maybe this will be helpful to you, of a procrastination monkey, an instant gratification monkey that gets on our shoulder that tries to get us distracted. There's something about this deadline that we say, well, we've got time, and this monkey gets on our shoulders and tries to tell us that we have time to do other things. They actually lead us, psychologists say, to a procrastination playground where we do all these other things, and because we know we've got a deadline and we'll get back to it, and because we have the ability to do it, we can get by accomplishing things at the very last minute. The playground the procrastination monkey or the instant gratification monkey leads us to doesn't satisfy us, but we find ourselves camping there a long time. And let me just give you an idea of how that works for me. I want you to imagine that I have an assignment next week to maybe turn in a book, a finished book that's going to be published. But it means I have about 100 pages that I have to complete. And so I get up and my full intention is to write those 100 pages that I need to write today to complete the task. But somehow the monkey jumps on my shoulder because I've got several days before the deadline. And the monkey begins to say, you need to check Facebook before you get into writing for your book. And so I go to Facebook. And then it says, don't forget email. So I go to email, and then Instagram, and what about those pants you were looking at on eBay? And so suddenly I've done all of that. And then this monkey says, what if there's snacks in the refrigerator? Now, I just checked snacks earlier that morning, but I think, I don't know, I better go and see if there's any snacks in the refrigerator. So I go to the refrigerator. Then I get back, and the little monkey will say, have you read your verse for the day? Well, I read. You want to read another verse? Yeah, let's read another verse. So I read another verse in the Bible. Then the monkey says, have you called your mom lately? No, I need to call my mom. Then the monkey says, let's go get some fresh air. Okay, let's go get some fresh air. We go outside. Then it says, have you found that receipt Jane was looking for your income tax? No, I haven't. I need to do that. Then it says, that was an interesting inauguration speech the other day. Let's look up some of the other inauguration speeches and let's compare and see how they look. So it's like, okay, I can do that. And then there's, are you going to work out today? Anyway, all of these things. And then the monkey says, oh, look, it's 2:30 in the afternoon. You have an appointment at 4. You can't write anything today. And I say, you're probably right. And I close my briefcase or close my computer and I quit. Anybody else ever go through things like that? Is that anybody else's life? Very, very tough, but that's the way it is for me. Jane doesn't function that way. She is a master at parties, having dinner parties. And we sometimes we've had 40, 50, 60 people at our house. She looks weeks ahead and begins to prepare those things that she can prepare, and she freezes them, but she's just doing a little bit each day until the party, and then she pulls it all out and people say, did you do this? And she's able to say, yes, yeah, I was able to, but she did it a little bit along the way, and that's an amazing thing. Psychologists say this, the instant gratification monkey is actually your brain's desire to avoid negative feelings associated with beginning a new task. Your brain doesn't want to begin a new task because it knows that's a little bit uncomfortable. So for those of us wired like me and many of you, we put off because we know we can operate against the deadline, and if we operate against the deadline, we're going to be okay. As the deadline gets closer, suddenly we get a wake-up call. Panic shows up and it scares the monkey. He flees up the tree and we suddenly know, oh my gosh, I've got to get busy. Now the reason I know this is not ADD is because I can focus when I have to focus. When I have to focus, you suddenly, when this happens to you, it happens to me, you become so unbelievably focused. You're stressed, but you are seriously focused and you can hunker down and you can get the job done. Now you're sick at your stomach. You're grouchy at other people. You stay up all night worrying about how you're going to get it done. But if you're lucky, you do finish. But most of us know deep down it's not our best work. Now, when this is your life, it is a real emotional drain. And many of us have experienced that. And there's a lot of consequences to this kind of behavior. There are external consequences. It can cause problems at work. Your team feels like you've let them down. It doesn't seem as if you are carrying your weight. Projects are done haphazardly. Assignments that fall through the cracks because you weren't there when you were supposed to be there. Reviews that you get are not what you know you should receive. It can cause problems in your home because you're never present in your home like you're supposed to be because you're thinking about the task that you should have done today, but you've put it off today because you're going to do it tomorrow, and now you're at home with your family, but you can't really be at home with your family because you're thinking about the task that you should have been doing. You're never present, always putting things off. There are internal consequences, stress, high blood pressure, constant anxiety, and there's even a sense of shame. I've experienced that, a knowledge that you're not realizing the purpose for which you were created. You're always just chasing that deadline because you're putting things off. Because of procrastination, you accomplish your have-to-dos, but you never get around to what you really want to do or what you really need to do. Let me say that again. Because of procrastination, you accomplish your have-to-dos, but you never get around to what you really want to do and what you really need to do. Can you relate? I know I can. Now let me give you a few moments trying to answer the question what you can do if you are a deadline procrastinator. So these are some of the things that experts say are helpful. Number one, be proactive. Stephen Covey first brought that word kind of to our lexicon when he wrote his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The very definition of proactivity means as human beings, we're responsible for our own lives, and so we've got to take steps of action. Often action precedes our attitude. We say, I don't feel like working today. That's all right. Start the project. Be proactive on the project. It is normally the starting that we are paralyzed about. Once we start, we can find that we can work. Being proactive means recognizing your responsibility to make things happen. That's the way it works. If you sit in a chair, nothing's going to happen. You've got to put your hands on the keys of the computer and you've got to begin to type. You've got to pick up the phone. You've got to make the sales call. You've got to actually get up and work. Another thing they suggest to do is to break down large assignments into smaller daily goals. Instead of one goal that I'm looking at the end of the year, I would have been wiser to say, I'm going to have 10 pages done by the end of October. I'm going to have to, that way I would have still worked against that deadline, but I would have worked against a smaller deadline for October, a smaller deadline for November, December, January, February, March, instead of putting it all off for one big assignment. I think that's a good thing to do. Schedule time blocks. Jeff will be teaching us, I'm sure, over the next year ways that we can master time management and build our lives around helpful time blocks. During this time block, this is what I'm going to do. I am not going to check email. I am not going to go to YouTube. I am not going to Google anything. I'm going to focus for this time on these things. Restrict social media and emails to no more than 2 time blocks a day. Schedule them. I'm going to have 30 minutes at this point in time in the day to do social media and emails, and I'm going to do social media and emails another time in the evening. This is when I'm going to do it. Turn your Wi-Fi off, or at least commit to no surfing while you're trying to work. If you work at a computer, don't surf the internet between every little thing that you do. Don't wait for everything to be perfect. A lot of people don't realize procrastinators procrastinate because they are secretly perfectionistic and they want everything to be perfect around them before they begin. It's important. Ecclesiastes 11:4 says this, if you wait for perfect conditions, you'll never get anything done. So don't expect everything to be perfect before you begin. You just have to begin. Realize your fear is in the starting. That's what makes us do this. It's the starting that we struggle with. We play the what if game. What if I try to do this project and I don't do it? Or what if it's miserable? Or what if my computer breaks? Or what if you think about all these things instead of realizing the fear is in the starting. When you start, things have a tendency of smoothing out. And don't settle. Don't settle. Listen, I want you to be concerned about this and don't let this be your life. Don't settle. Don't think you're just lazy. You're not lazy. Don't think this is just the way you are. It doesn't have to be. You can beat procrastination. But now there's one final thing I want to say, and this will let you all go home, because I think all of us have a problem with procrastination, not just deadline procrastinators. I think those of you who were smug here for the first part of the message, I think this is a word for you as well. Some here face a much greater problem than being a deadline procrastinator. The deadline procrastinator lives with an undue stress, but the fear of the deadline does cause him to accomplish what he needs to get done. I know it's not done to the best of your ability, but you do get it done. That's what you are. But many here are life procrastinators. Now hear me. You do fine at life when there is a deadline, but you procrastinate in areas that are far more important because you don't sense a deadline. Hear me. You procrastinate at things that are far more important because you don't sense a deadline. The instant gratification monkey that sits on my shoulder, so obvious to see, its sneakiest trick is this: when there are no deadlines. When you don't sense a deadline at all, you're oblivious to what you need to be thinking about. And when you are not aware, it causes damage in your relationships because you're not thinking about a deadline. So loving acts of kindness that need to be delivered to your partner or your kids, you never get around to doing that because there's no deadline there. See, if there was a deadline, you would have done it, but there's no deadline. Play dates with your children, they're unrealized because you couldn't move it from your idea to actually doing it, so you just leave it undone. You put off living the adventure-filled life you've always dreamed of. How many people have I talked to in their 70s and 80s that have said, I wished I had done things differently, but you put it off because there's no deadline for you. You live with haunting regret. I wrote this past week and put it out as a meme. Our greatest fear is not death. It is to not live the fullest life to the fullest extent possible. We all lament coming to the end of our life with our final words being, I wish I had. But we just put it off. You fail to put in the work that's necessary for you to live your best life because you don't see a deadline, and so you just say, I'll get around to it later. And it takes hard work. To really experience change, it takes hard work. You know it takes effort to go to an AA meeting? It takes effort to go to an AA meeting. And some people, instead of going to the AA meeting that requires effort, they say, this will get fixed tomorrow. This will get fixed tomorrow. And they're 40, and then they're 50, and then they're 60, and then they're 80, and it never got fixed. It takes effort to go to marriage counseling. When your marriage is messed up and there's still hope to save it, it takes effort. Do you know it takes effort to conquer debt through planning and monthly evaluation of kind of how you're doing with your finances? That takes a little bit of effort, but so often we never put in the work to do the things we need to do because we're not aware of a deadline, and we just think, I'll get around to that next week, next month, next year, and the deadline is just kind of arbitrary. It's not a firm deadline, because if it was a firm deadline, you'd fix it because that's the way you are. But we never get around to doing it, and we put off joy. We put off joy that we should experience today, but we put it off for tomorrow. Psalm 118 says this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. What is it? This day. This day. But because of procrastination, we don't rejoice and celebrate today. We'll celebrate tomorrow. I know some of us just keep putting off, and sadly our life's going to be over. If you're a life procrastinator, your situation is much more serious than the person who puts off the term paper until the last day, although this is not good and this person needs to work on this. It's much more serious to miss a life. It's much more serious. So let me give you two words as we close. The first word is this: we all have to stop making excuses. We all have to stop making excuses. We can live a higher level life. We can. But we've got to stop making excuses. No one can do this but you. You have put off living long enough. Your family needs you. Your family needs you to be the best you. Your kids need you. Your grandkids need you. Our church needs you to step up and say, I'm going to live in my joy today. I'm going to live a full life and beautiful life today. I'm going to get a handle on these things that are tripping me up today. Ben Franklin said this: people who are good at making excuses are rarely good at anything else. That's true, and I remember those of you that played football about the same age as I was, our coaches used to say excuses were like, we'll say armpits, but he used a different word. Everybody's got one, and they all stink. Y'all remember him saying stuff like that, your coaches? And it's true, excuses all stink. My second word to you is this: we need to develop a sense of urgency about our lives. Develop a sense of urgency. Some people say to me, how come some people travel? I always wished I could travel. We never could travel. Let me tell you a little secret. You know how they do it? They schedule it. They put it down and they just do it. They have the same difficulties you have. They just do it. There's a sense of urgency. They're just going to go. And so they put it on the schedule and they make that a priority and they just go. I love that. There's a sense of urgency. Let's do it. I love that Stephen Jobs said this, let's go out and make a dent in the universe. Let's just do it. This rocked me this week. This is a life calendar. I want to show you two pictures on the screen. This first box, if you live to be 90 years old, that's all the boxes representing every week of your life. That's 4,693 weeks. If you're fortunate enough to live to be 90, which is way above life expectancy, but if you're fortunate enough to be 90, that's the number of weeks in your life. If you want to count it after the service, I'll let you. That's the right number of boxes up there. So I have a real smart friend, and I said to my real smart friend, Neil, I'm 54. If I'm 54, show me where I am in my life calendar. And he created this. Can you see it? Doesn't show up quite as clear, but you see the red? Can you see where it turns to red? The blue is what I have accomplished thus far. If I live to be 90, I am way past halfway. I'm significantly past halfway if I live to be 90. Every week, the time goes, the time goes, the time goes, the time goes. I look in the mirror sometimes and I think, what happened to the young man that used to stand here? But he's gone. Now, am I sad that I'm 54? I'm so happy. But I just know I don't have many weeks I just want to give up. I want to live every week fully. And I want you to as well. So, the excuse of procrastination, let's not put it off any longer. Hebrews 3:15 says, today if you hear his voice, don't harden your hearts. Today, if you feel him speaking to you, say yes to the life he wants you to live. Today is a good day. A good day to say yes to God. A good day to say yes to a bigger life, yes to your dreams, yes to being the man or woman that you've always felt you could be. Yes to getting serious about some of the attitudes that have been tripping you up and bringing you down. Yes to saying everything God brings to us that's good, I want to receive it, God. Yes to being the partner you know deep down you want to be. Yes to life, abundant life. Yes to life lived aware of your connection to the divine every day. You just know. Yes to living this day, the best day, the only day we have, fully. Would you bow your heads, please? Oh God, may we not put off for tomorrow what we might begin today. Help us live the life you've given to us. May we put off those things that are hindering us, and may we cling to your precious Spirit who moves in and through us. And at the end of our days, may we look back and say, we lived this life to the fullest. We weren't procrastinators about life. May we live it to the fullest in everything we do. And we pray this in Christ's name.